Hello, welcome to the Citrus Garden. If you're new here, my name is Christina. If you're not new here, hi, welcome back. It's great to see you. This is a reading for Taurus moons, or if you have very strong Taurus placements in your chart and are needing a feminine energy to work with or balance within yourself, then this reading is for you. So Taurus, I've been trying to record your video for the last couple of days. There was one day where the message was super clear in terms of like it flowed perfectly is kind of how the energy was feeling on that day. But there was sort of this energy about that reading where it was kind of like there was a decision that you were needing to make, Taurus, that had to be your decision entirely is kind of what was coming through. Like it was a particular challenge that you had to go through almost like without anybody else's influence is kind of how it's coming through. So I didn't post the reading because it felt like to me that in posting the reading, or like whoever needed to hear that message, it would have perhaps caused more resistance is kind of how it was coming through. And so it's like it was kind of feeling like up until this reading of like waiting to gather enough information is kind of the energy that's coming through. And I feel like it's like you've gathered all of the data now, or you've reached a certain point where you can kind of lay everything out in front of you is kind of how it was feeling to me. Like you've collected enough data, or are now able to see the patterns perhaps, or something like that. Because it's like you have the complete set is what it was looking to me like. And it's like perhaps just like getting things in order, or like being able to arrange or find some sort of pattern within all of this information is kind of what's coming through. So if we just start off with the context of the reading, I pulled so many cards, and the only reason why is because like there's so much planetary energy in your reading today. So we have Mercury and Mars, the antimony card, and then we have Uranus, and the tin card here is representing Jupiter, which I feel like this tin card actually has a lot of relevance because this card talks about like wanting an expansion, wanting to move towards something, but perhaps there's not enough resources yet in order to move towards that. So it's like collecting information or gathering enough resources or enough strength in order to move towards the expansion that you are envisioning. So that could be like the overall energy of like, there was perhaps this period of perhaps waiting or gathering enough information or enough resources in whatever way in order to move towards the next thing. And I feel like that's what is coming through here. The Mercury card coming out, because you also had the Mercury card in this deck as well, so double Mercury. Which is interesting because this last Mercury retrograde, which was over a while ago, but we were in this sort of the shadow period, and it just sort of left that. So we're finally free of whatever this Mercury retrograde energy was. And I feel like that has, like, perhaps, again, for me in Mercury retrograde, how I experience it is that looking back at past patterns, whatever they are, but like relationships or just like behaviors that we fall into, that kind of thing, like routines that perhaps need changing or something like that. And especially because of these cards coming out, these first three cards, we had the Devil, the Six of Cups, and the Eight of Cups. So the Devil to me always represents patterns, right? Like things that keep us in sort of a stable way of being. So it's not always a bad thing, right? So the Devil energy is things that keep us perhaps in a comfort zone, right? Maybe something like that. Because the Devil also to me represents the vessel, like something about like your body, right? Like your body is sort of the container, so to speak, for your soul, right? So it's absolutely a necessary aspect, right? But it's talking about like established patterns, like an established way of being, perhaps. And coming out with the Six of Cups and the Eight of Cups is that it could be in terms of your relationships with others, because the Six of Cups to me represents sort of like soulmates in general, romantic or not, right? Like it's just a general card to represent people who are important to you. So it could have been like your way of being, your patterns perhaps in relationships from the past, because it is bringing in sort of this Mercury retrograde energy, which is finally like, it's like perhaps this last retrograde season was very difficult for you, in just like going back to past energies, right? Like perhaps a very significant relationship of yours, but then it's like now you have enough information in order to recognize what the pattern was, perhaps, and then with the Eight of Cups, walking away from that, because this was absolutely not serving you, is kind of how the energy is feeling today. And it's coming through with the next couple cards, which is really interesting. The Temperance card, the Death card, and then the King of Cups, which is really interesting. So I feel like the reading is finally coming through today, because obviously this is a Taurus moon reading, but right now as I'm filming this, the moon is in Scorpio, which is this sort of death energy. And so I was thinking about sort of like the difference between Scorpio energy and Taurus energy, right? Because they are opposite signs. And so the thing that was being highlighted for me in terms of like the difference between Scorpio and Taurus energy, just very simply, very generally, is sort of like this energy of like stability, which is Taurus, and change, which is Scorpio, right? Like, because Scorpio is all about sort of like the death, rebirth cycles, right? Change, renewal, like all of this sort of like endings and new beginnings. Whereas Taurus, I see as sort of being more of like an energy that's stable or unchanging in a very positive way, right? Like it's very stable, very, very secure, all about sort of like very firm foundations. That's sort of the energy that's coming through. And so it could be that this current energy feels a bit of like a challenge or difficulty, because it's perhaps highlighting some aspect of your past or your patterns that is needing to go through change, but the change is uncomfortable because it's an energy that you would rather not, that is just uncomfortable, right? There's discomfort there, but it's like, it's kind of like it's becoming sort of this need to move through whatever this transformation is kind of what's coming through. That's just the overall context. I feel like there's enough in there for you to sort of like chew on maybe, but I feel like there's, anyways, we'll go through the cards, because for the actual reading part, we're starting off here with this resin card, which is so interesting. The message that was coming through today for this card talks about stability, right, which is a very Taurian energy, and transparency, which is also, I feel like, very Taurian, right? It's like, because opposite to Scorpio, right? Scorpio is, you can describe as being sort of mysterious, right? There's sort of like an energy of an unknown there, whereas Taurus here, how it's coming through today is being very stable and very transparent, right? And it's like through this transparency, there's something here perhaps that is becoming very clear to you, is kind of how it's coming through. And then the next cards here, you have the separation and the Saturn card, which I find so fascinating, because I tried recording this video twice in the last couple of days, and both of the messages that were coming through was kind of like the two opposite energies both being true is kind of what was coming through. So I'm not going to go through all of that, because I feel like what that means, especially because there's a Scorpio energy in this reading, is kind of feeling like there's like almost like an opposite energy being shown to you or being highlighted in some way in order for you to like separate it out, is kind of how it's coming through with the separation. Because it's kind of, I feel like I'm not explaining that properly, but it's like with the geometry card, this geometry card has been coming through with this sort of energy of like measuring, right? Like measuring things, or like using sort of, the word that was coming through here was a ruler, right? Like using a ruler or like measuring tape or something like that in order to like create some sort of separation, right? So if you think about like a ruler, or using something to measure, like something like woodworking, for example, it's like using a measure, like drawing out a line and then cutting along that line, right? And so I feel like there's that kind of energy happening where it's like there's some sort of Saturn-like energy, which is a very masculine sort of discipline-oriented kind of energy of like cutting things out or cutting things down or placing sort of limitations or boundaries on something in your life. I don't know what that is, but in doing that, it's sort of highlighting something about like a past pattern or something like that, right? It's like this process of separating out or like cutting out maybe things are like making things really transparent is kind of how it's coming through, right? It's making things really clear to you is how that's feeling. Perhaps from almost like a detached perspective, right? It's like, especially if you're looking at sort of the past or like looking at like your past, whatever, memories, right? With the resin card, this card talks about memories or holding or preservation, like things that we want to keep preserved. So it could be going back and sort of delineating, or I was seeing sort of like a table of values in sort of like math where you have like two columns, right? Like an X and a Y column, and putting all of the data points into each of the columns. And from that you can see the relationship between the two variables, right? I feel like it's something like that. That's what this is looking to me like. There's one side and there's like two sides or two opposites, or like one sort of a darkness energy, one sort of the light energy, if you want to think of it like that, or if you want to think of it like shadow versus light or whatever, doesn't matter. It's showing the relationship between those two things is kind of how it's feeling, through perhaps separating out or like making lines, or I'm not sure exactly what that means. Hopefully that's making sense to somebody. But you have here the Hermit card, which is all of this sort of like inner journeying kind of energy. I feel like this is a very sort of like internal process that you're going through, but perhaps also like having very like working with perhaps your environment in some way, right? Like it's an internal process, but obviously it's kind of like your physical space reflects that as well, right? And then here you have this Three of Swords and the Page of Pentacles, and I feel like this is the past energy, right? Because if this is the only card that's sort of in black and white, is kind of how it's feeling. There's only, because all the other cards are very vibrant, meaning I feel like that's the more, this is sort of the past energy, and everything else is sort of like you and your present. And it's like, I feel like this is sort of the present, like this is the past energy, the Three of Swords. And then this is sort of like the direct result of this with the Page of Pentacles, of having to hold steady with this resin card, right? There's all of this sort of energy of holding, because I feel like it's something like, because this is also a moon energy, a moon reading, I feel like it has to do with perhaps like your emotional state of like holding very steady in terms of how you feel, or like what you're feeling, or in terms of like holding steady, because this Hermit card is looking directly at this Three of Swords, meaning I feel like there's this holding steady, a very strong sort of determination to face whatever this heartbreak energy is in the past, right? Whatever that was for you. Very determined to sort of heal it is kind of what's coming through here with the Ace of Cups coming out next, which is so lovely, because I feel like this Page of Pentacles is not where you want to be. it's because this card always talks to me about like trying to grow something perhaps in an environment that's not necessarily, or maybe it is, I don't know, I'm not sure if it is the right place for you, but it's kind of feeling like you've been here for a while and perhaps nothing has come out of this situation yet. So it's kind of like you're, in order to resolve whatever this situation is, looking to the past, which is, I feel like, is the right thing for you, because what's coming out next here, so you have the Ace of Cups, which is so lovely. It's all of this, like, this card to me, I always feel as being sort of like a holding space for yourself is kind of what's coming through, right? Like almost like healing whatever this energy is, especially with like the heart, right? The separation. Healing it with all of this like gorgeous love energy. That's what this card is, that's what this reading is talking about. And it's really interesting here with the roots, because it's like I was really drawn to sort of like these, the strings or the roots. There's something else there, but I'll come back to it. So the next cards here, you have here the Benevolent Guide and the Miracles, which I really love. These two cards coming out together. So it could be that there's somebody helping you in this situation, right? As being sort of a guide, or coming in with sort of like a relief, or like a, perhaps like an epiphany with the sort of Pegasus energy, or the ability to sort of just like take a step back from your situation and look at it from perhaps more of like a detached, in some way, perspective, right? Detached in terms of like they're not immediately in this situation with you. It kind of feels like they're at a distance in some way, because it's kind of like looking like this here with the Silence card coming out next. This card is so fascinating to me, because it was kind of coming through the energy of like you will feel this guide's energy when you are in silence, right? That's kind of what was coming through here. It's like their presence perhaps becomes the most accessible to you when you are in a place of silence or stillness or quiet or whatever. I feel like there's something else with this card, but it's not coming through right now, so I'm just going to move on to the next cards. So what you have next here is this really interesting combination, the Five of Swords and the Three of Wands. So this Five of Swords talks to me about like, I feel like there's something in the background. There's something here that I feel like perhaps you haven't been wanting to look at for whatever reason, but it's like when you actually turn to look at it with the Three of Wands, right? It's like turning to face whatever this is, because I feel like this is something else actually. It's because it's like you are facing, I feel like you've been focused on this sort of Three of Swords a lot, right? It's like you've been really determined to clear whatever this, or heal whatever this heartbreak energy was. But it's kind of like, I feel like what this guide perhaps is trying to show you is that there's something here, right? It's like you've been focused on this energy for such a long time. It's almost like it's perhaps maybe draining you, or just like giving you a headache kind of thing. And so it's like that, wanting you to turn and look at this. And I feel like you perhaps haven't been looking at this new thing, is kind of how it's feeling, because I don't know, it's because you want to deal with this first, is kind of how it's feeling like. You want to deal with whatever this energy is first before you look towards that. But I feel like there is sort of like this thing here of like wanting to draw your attention towards whatever the new thing is kind of how it's feeling. Because right now it kind of feels like there's been a lot of focus on clearing the old, right? And like seeing patterns between, I don't know what it is for you, seeing just past patterns, or finally getting some sort of clarity about perhaps yourself, or like the things that you chose in the past maybe. And there's this new thing is kind of what it's feeling like, this, the Three of Wands, because I feel like in this process, something has been almost like taking shape, almost like while you were dealing with something else, is kind of how it's coming through. Something has been taking shape that is desirable to you, that you want, right? It's like that, because it's like it's wanting you to look at this, whatever this is. It's coming out here with the coagulation card, which is so interesting, because it's like with all this, because this was looking to me like a root structure, right? But at the same time, with that resin card, because this is talking about like transparency and stability. This coagulation card is also talking about stability, right? And I feel like this is the new thing, because this was the last card to come out. Something is taking shape behind you, or like not in the direction that you've been facing, right? Because it looks like you've been looking at the past. That's sort of how it's feeling to me. But I guess in your future, like what you're supposed to be going towards, something has been taking shape is kind of how it's looking. But it's not quite clear what that is yet. But it's coming through here with this sort of Mars and Neptune energy, which is really fascinating because Mars came out also in the bottom of the deck, right? So you have Mars twice. And then the Neptune card is kind of feeling like this energy of... Neptune to me is a very sort of like dreamy energy. It talks about like sort of the collective, also subconscious energy as well. Like very watery, almost like a dream state is kind of what's coming through here. There's been something, I want to say that has something coming into being in your future that you haven't been looking towards because you've been so focused on clearing this past energy is kind of how it's feeling. And with this Mars energy coming through twice, and the antimony card wants to be paired with this. So this card talks about like a very intense call towards something, right? And it's like, this is something that is best not ignored. With this Uranus card as well, this talks to me about like a sudden inspiration or sudden new direction, because I feel like that's what's on the horizon for you. It's just that maybe you haven't been focused on that because you're determined to sort of clear whatever the past energy is. Because with this coagulation here with the Seven of Pentacles, which is so interesting with the roots, right? It's like this, I feel like there's been sort of like with this Page of Pentacles, because of what you've been dealing with, a holding steady, right? Like perhaps, and because it's like sort of centered around the heart, whatever this pentacle is, it's like holding steady within your emotional state. But there's something else here with the Seven of Pentacles, with the coagulation, something coming into being, things taking shape, perhaps that is unrelated to this thing. Maybe, I don't know if it's related or not. Perhaps it is, right? Especially because your whole reading has been sort of like this, like two opposite energies, like the shadow aspect and the light aspect, if you want to phrase it like that, right? It's just talking about opposites, where I feel like you've been doing so much work in terms of clearing or integrating sort of the shadow aspect, but this is sort of the light aspect. This is the thing that you were trying to go towards or like trying to create, but first you had to clear or integrate that shadow aspect. And I feel like there's something really important here coming into being, whatever that is. And it's like as soon as you sort of turn towards whatever this new thing is, it's like it becomes, it just is kind of how it's coming through with this Emperor card, right? Which is all of this sort of the Saturn energy, right? Which is kind of strange because this is a moon reading, but I feel like it's something like you had to go into the shadow, whatever that means, into the darkness to integrate some aspect of that. And then this Emperor aspect comes out or becomes, because this is what came out after the Seven of Pentacles, which is kind of looking to me like especially because we were talking with the Saturn card, it was feeling like cutting things into shape, like putting more restriction perhaps or discipline in order to create something really refined is what's coming through here. So it's like this is almost like the final product, or like something that you've been working towards, and perhaps you just got a little bit lost in the like the restrictive aspect, that it's like the final product is here and ready. It's almost like you got too drawn into almost like the details and forgot what it was that you were actually working towards, which is this Emperor, right? And I feel like it's here. And with these 3 cards coming out, it's the Page of Cups, the 2 of Wands, and the 10 of Pentacles. It's all of this sort of like being pulled up out of whatever that sort of heaviness energy was, and then being free to sort of like dream again is kind of what's coming through with the 2 of Wands and the 10 of Pentacles. It's like, because it's like you were in sort of this energy of like cutting a lot of things out, that you almost forgot that you were supposed to be working towards something more expansive, right? That's what the tin energy is coming through with. Like, perhaps there was a time where you didn't have enough resources or whatever it was in order to move towards the goal. So you had to cut back, you had to restrict, you had to be really disciplined about something. But then now it's almost like a flip into the opposite, where it's like all of that work that you put in with the 7 of Pentacles was in order to build something or to grow or expand towards something, whatever this Emperor energy is. And it's like, it's almost like you did all the work without knowing that you were doing anything, right? Because it's almost like you were restricting yourself or disciplining yourself in some way. But each one of those sort of like drawing lines is what I'm going to call it, was actually allowing you to move towards something or build something really, really incredible with this 10 of Pentacles. Something that's very solid and stable and abundant. Okay, Taurus, I'm going to end the reading there. If you're interested in the extended, you can find the link in the description box below. You'll also find my website if you're interested in a personal reading. If this message resonated with you, please consider subscribing, liking, or leaving a comment down below. Thank you so much for sharing your energy with me, and I hope you have a great day. Bye.